In the dark forest lies a secret, told in broken stories by those who bore witness, a monster, a murder, a long forgotten homestead. I'm on the search for the ghosts who haunt these places, and I want you to come along. Welcome to Tales, Trails, and Taverns. Here I take an active approach to finding places that people might warn you not to go to. Haunted trails, abandoned towns, old taverns where you might catch a glimpse of a long deceased patron. Look, you're probably not going to find me trekking through Arizona looking to have a run-in with a skinwalker, and you certainly won't catch me playing with a Ouija board, but I have spent at least the last 10 years seeking out creepy, haunted, and abandoned places to explore. So lace up your boots, grab a working flashlight, and join me as I tell the tales, hike the trails, and grab a cold pint at the local tavern. You can find the podcast on Apple, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. You can find show updates on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook, and YouTube, and also check out the blog at talestrailsandtaverns.com. And now, I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Welcome to the D.E.A.D podcast, where I discuss all things spooky and weird. I'm Desi, and today I'll be talking about the ghost of Chipita Rodriguez. Let's get started. Hey everyone, how is everyone doing tonight? I hope y'all are doing good. And I am drinking tonight a new wine. It is called Bella Bolle. It is a sweet Italian red wine, and it is very good. I just saw it and it looked good, so I wanted to try it, and I'm drinking it out of my Skull wine glass. So I will post a picture of that. And then my shirt I am wearing tonight is another, I guess, kind of Texas-y. It has a skeleton cowboy in cowboy boots and a cowboy hat with a like roping, and it has roses underneath it and cactus, and at the top it says Country Roads Take Me Home, and then it says Wild West Rodeo Tour. So I'll post a picture of that and kind of go in theme because this is a local legend that I'm going to be talking about tonight that is pretty close to home, and I actually forgot about this story. I remember reading about it. I want to say I was in high school, and I remember talking about it. There was like a book, and it had like a yellow cover, and it had her like hanging, and some kids talked about seeing her, but I had completely forgotten. And I had a bunch of ghosts, paranormal, haunted places books just in Texas alone, stacks of them, and I haven't even opened them. I was trying to do some research and kind of get some inspiration for a new episode, and I was kind of just skimming through all the books when I came across hers. And when I started reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember this story. I thought it would be a good one to read and tell you about her story and about her ghost and her sightings. Let's get started talking about that. No soy culpable. I am not guilty. Those were reportedly the last words of Chipita Rodriguez, who was the first woman legally hung in Texas. The ghost of Chipita Rodriguez, hanged unjustly in 1863, is believed to haunt the Nueces River banks, crying, I am not guilty. Her death and legend are as pertinent to the state of Texas as that of the Alamo and Goliad stories. It was in death that Chipita Rodriguez became part of Texas lore. Josefa Chipita Rodriguez was born on December 30th, 1799, or around there, in Mexico. Her father was Pedro Rodriguez. There is no record of her mother's name. Her father was believed to have abandoned the Mexican army during Santa Anna's march to San Antonio in 1836. It is during this time that the family moved to the banks of the Nueces River near San Patricio. Her father left to join the Texas militia and was killed in the Texas Revolution. Legend says that she married when she was 20 and had a baby, but her husband abandoned her and left with the baby. After this, she lived on the banks of the Nueces River and had a modest jacal, or a hut, that became the resting place for travelers who wandered the Texas plains after the Texas Revolution and into the Civil War era. There, the travelers could find a cot or lay down their bedroll, as Chipita would provide cooked meals, trying to make a living in the harsh, sun-bitten, and mesquite-laden terrain. Cotton was hauled overland across South Texas on that road and sold in Matamoros on the Mexican side of the Rio Grande to help raise money for the Confederate cause, because Union warships had blockaded southern ports during the Civil War. Others also traveled the road from just east of Houston south to the Confederacy's back door. One of those travelers was John Savage, a horse trader and supposedly a pretty good one. He had $600 in gold in his saddlebags from the sale of horses to the Confederate Army. Since he was not going to reach the Rio Grande by nightfall, he decided to stop at Chipita's inn for the night. She offered him a hot meal for supper and a cot on her front porch for him to spread his bedroll. The next morning, Chipita noticed he appeared to be gone, but just assumed he arose early and left the hut before sunrise. A few days later, two house servants from the Welder Ranch were washing clothes in the river when they found a burlap bag floating downstream. They managed to get the bag to shore, but they were horrified to find John Savage's dismembered remains. His head had been split with an axe. Sheriff William Means' investigation led him to Chipita's front porch, where he retrieved an axe and also spotted blood. Chipita protested that the axe was for splitting wood and the blood was from the chickens, but the sheriff and his men did not believe her. Chipita was arrested immediately, along with Juan Silvera, who is rumored to have been her illegitimate son, for stealing $600 in gold that Savage was carrying and then murdering him. Some say Juan is the one who carried out the gruesome murder. The $600 worth of gold was recovered in Savage's saddlebags shortly after her arrest. The jury was made up of people pulled off the street, and it was a swift trial. Chipita was silent all through her trial, except to repeat, "No soy culpable." The trial lasted through the morning, and just before noon she was found guilty of first-degree murder, and Silvera with second-degree murder. The letter from the jury read, "We, the jury, find the defendant, Chipita Rodriguez, guilty of murder in the first degree, but on the account of her old age and the circumstantial evidence against her, do recommend her to the mercy of the court." Judge Neal ignored the jury's wishes and gave Silvera 5 years in prison and ordered Chipita to be hanged on Friday, November 13th, 1863. Again, she repeated, "No soy culpable." I am not guilty. She waited in the San Patricio Lean-To jail, secured with leg irons and chains to the back wall of the courthouse. Townspeople brought her food and corn shuck cigarettes. School children shared their cookies. A local woman brought Chipita a white mull dress so that she would have something decent to wear to her hanging. Another woman fought off the deputy with a stick when he came to borrow her new wagon to take Chipita and her wooden coffin to the hanging tree. The deputy had to go elsewhere to secure his transportation. Chipita, dressed as if for a party and still in chains, sat on her coffin in a two-wheeled cart and smoked a corn shuck cigarette as the death wagon moved through the town and out of the Nueces River on a dreary, misty, stormy afternoon on Friday the 13th. The crowd gathered on the Ware Ranch on the banks of the Nueces River. The people that came to witness the event became very quiet. Some ladies cried, and one fainted. The hangman slipped the noose around her neck, and once again she quietly murmured, "No soy culpable." Now everyone knows that the pace of an oxen is slow, and as they moved forward, the noose tightened very slowly. Chipita's death was slow and sad. Her final words echoed, "No soy culpable." The hangman wrestled the heavy coffin into a hastily dug shallow grave right there under the tree, placed Chipita's body in the coffin, put the lid in place, and shoveled back the dirt. One bystander swore he heard a moan coming from the coffin, and Chipita's words stayed with him. On his way to church the next Sunday, Sheriff William Means turned around and went home, when, he said, he saw the devil sitting on a fence. Before long, others reported seeing a ghostly figure, a restless spirit, haunting the river bottoms. It was Chipita, they said, buried without a funeral or a wake, and still protesting her innocence. On any Friday the 13th, but especially November the 13th, many people have felt or seen the spirit of Chipita Rodriguez in the San Patricio area. Mostly, she is said to appear whenever a woman in Texas is convicted of murder and sentenced to death. After World War I, a Fayette County woman due to be hanged, Chipita wandered for days until the convicted woman died in her cell, and then her ghost supposedly disappeared. Then in the 1940s, Emma Oliver was condemned to die. Chipita moaned among the mesquites that lined the Nueces River bottom. When Oliver's sentence was commuted, her cries of anguish ceased. Again, in 1959, when Maggie Morgan was facing death in the electric chair, Chipita was visible among the mesquites. Again, the sentence was commuted, and once again, Chipita's ghost withdrew. She presumably came forward one last time in 1978, when Mary Lou Anderson was tried for murder, but Anderson's sentence was reduced when she testified against her accomplice. It is believed that Chipita's spirit is disturbed by the circumstances of her own trial and execution, then sees the awfulness of another woman's death, and that is what causes her to emerge. Or, perhaps, it is the emotional turmoil of being hanged, knowing you are innocent, that has unsettled her spirit. Some locals believe that because her body was not buried in a cemetery, instead she was buried beneath a mesquite tree near the Nueces River. In 1985, State Senator Carlos Truan of Corpus Christi tried to rectify the situation by filing a resolution to absolve Chipita Rodriguez of murder. The 69th legislature passed the resolution, and it was signed by Governor Mark White on June 13, 1985, and cleared Chipita's name. And by 1998, when Carla Faye Tucker was executed, there were no reported sightings of Chipita's ghost. So, she may finally be resting in peace. In 2010, Chipita received a historical marker in Old San Patricio, placed in front of the old courthouse near a bunch of mesquite trees. And so that is the story of Chipita Rodriguez and the horrible acts that were committed against her, being falsely accused, being hanged, and nobody listening to her that she was not guilty. And it's just sad. I'm glad that she was pardoned eventually, so that's good, and has her own plaque and everything. I haven't been. I would love to go though, so maybe I will go sometime, and then I can post pictures for y'all. That's like a little update. I'll go check that out. But let me know if y'all have heard of this legend. That brings me to the end of this episode. Thanks for listening to the D.E.A.D podcast. Please follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at the D.E.A.D podcast. Also, feel free to send in your stories, episode suggestions, or feedback at the deadpodcast1 at gmail.com, or send me a DM on Instagram. If you enjoyed this show, please rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you are listening on, and be sure to come back next week for my next episode.